aboard! That's right, folks. I'm feeling really generous, and I've really enjoyed this. Let's do it again. All aboard the follow train. Next 10 people that hop on that Twitter follow train, I'm following back because I'm feeling generous, and I love connecting with everybody on the Twitter. So go ahead and follow me. Choo-choo! All aboard that follow train. I'm following back, and we got a lot to get into on Dolphins today. Anthony Weaver, our new defensive coordinator, made his first public statements as the defensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk about it next on Dolphins Today. Hey, welcome into Dolphins Today. I'm your host, Jake Riepma. And Anthony Weaver, the Dolphins' new defensive coordinator, made his first statements as the Dolphins' defensive coordinator. We're going to break it all down, so buckle up, dial it in, and there's a lot to take away from an opening press conference. And just in case you need a little bit of a reminder, let's get to know the new Dolphins defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver. He's been in the NFL since 2012. Most recently, the Ravens associate head coach and defensive line coach and run game coordinator under the tutelage of John Harbaugh. Obviously, the Ravens have built a very impressive organization and team over there in Baltimore, especially on the defensive side of things. So Anthony Weaver getting a shot as the Dolphins defensive coordinator. Before that, he was a defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans in 2020 and the D-line coach before that from 2016 to 2019. Also played in the NFL as well. So a wealth of experience and quite a bit to be excited about. And as I mentioned, we're going to break it all down because there might be a new look Dolphins defense in a couple of different aspects. We'll discuss that. And some very, very compelling and interesting comments on Jalen Ramsey and what his expectations and role for the Pro Bowl cornerback might look like. And I have a hint for you. You're going to like what he had to say about Jalen Ramsey. So let's dive in. My first takeaway from the Anthony Weaver press conference, let's talk a little X's and O's here. Schematically speaking, Anthony Weaver is going to employ a multiple defense. Now, what that means is there will be varying fronts, varying different types of defense, whereas Vic Fangio was very much a 3-4 guy from a schematical standpoint and from a philosophical standpoint, whereas Anthony Weaver isn't afraid of mixing it up and showing different types of fronts defensively. Now, what all does that mean? It's difficult to quantify it in just a press conference setting, and there's obviously going to be more to it when we actually see the X's and O's employed from Anthony Weaver, but I do think it speaks to the flexibility that he has as a coach, and I don't want this to turn into just a bashing Vic Fangio segment where Vic Fangio did this and Anthony Weaver's going to do this. So I think there's a lot more to the conversation than just that, but it is worth pointing out the stark difference and contrast between the two different types of styles where Weaver is willing and able to employ multiple defenses depending on what's out there, whereas Fangio is very old school, stuck in his ways. Again, right, wrong, or indifferent. It didn't work out with Vic Fangio, out with the old and in with the new, and Anthony Weaver. Now, with a multiple defense, I think the Dolphins' defensive edge rushing depth chart is most important to take a look at because we know with Vic Fangio, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubbs, and Andrew Van Ginkel all thrived in that 3-4 system. But that also meant guys like Emmanuel Ogbah played less than 20% of the snaps on defense under Vic Fangio. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, more than just a defensive coordinator's schematical approach to the game. The ability to impact the game as a player is ultimately most important, and Ogbah didn't show that under Vic Fangio. But now, Anthony Weaver, new defensive coordinator, and perhaps a new opportunity for Emmanuel Ogbah. And if you follow Dolphins Today, you know I've had Emmanuel Ogbah on the top of the list of cut candidates because he has the highest base salary on the Miami Dolphins team and played less than 20% of the snaps on defense. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out why you consider him as a possible cut candidate because he makes a lot of money and doesn't play a lot. Now, turn the page under Anthony Weaver's leadership as the defensive coordinator. Maybe it's a new opportunity, but again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We'll know a lot more once his actual defense is employed now. But I want you to be honest with me. Does Anthony Weaver make you more confident in the Dolphins defense leading as the defensive coordinator? Let me know if you're more confident in this Dolphins defense by typing M for more, or less confident than when Vic Fangio was running the show. Type L for less. Either way, let your voice be heard and let me know down in the comments. Now, the really good part of the press conference, and I've never been a win the press conference guy, the rah, 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 and here we go. I know, obviously, I'll have a different opinion when we actually see the defense in place. But one thing I love that Anthony Weaver said was when he started talking about Jalen Ramsey and how he plans to maximize his contributions to the defense, something Vic Fangio did not, in a lot of people's opinion, mine included. Jalen Ramsey, I believe, will be better utilized under Anthony Weaver, and this quote tells you just about everything you need to know. Anthony Weaver, in his opening press conference, said to have him sit outside and be a field corner or something like that, I think is a detriment, and we got to find ways to move them around where he can be most impactful. And what do we say about any coach, offense, defense, special teams? The ability to put your players in position to make impactful plays is the name of the game, and many would make the case Vic Fangio did not do that with Jalen Ramsey and other star players in particular, but especially Jalen Ramsey. So it's one thing for Anthony Weaver to say it. I agree with it. I believe in it. It makes me excited, but it will, again, we'll see when this defense actually comes into form how what he says in the press conference matches up with what product is on the field. But there's no doubt about it, no mistaking that Jalen Ramsey, Pro Bowl caliber player, has been an All-Pro. The resume speaks for itself, as good as it gets at the cornerback position, and I'm looking forward to Anthony Weaver utilizing that skill set of Jalen Ramsey. And you heard it here first. I'm expecting a breakout year from Jalen Ramsey in 2024. But I gave you my take. How about you? I want to hear from you. What's your confidence level in Jalen Ramsey under the direction of Anthony Weaver as the defensive coordinator? Let me know down in the comments. Confidence level in Jalen Ramsey. Scale it for me 1 through 10. And I got to be honest with you, it's a 10 for me. You got Anthony Weaver saying he's the ultimate chess piece and he's going to figure out ways to help Jalen Ramsey be as impactful as he can be. That puts my confidence level at a 10. But let me know what you say down in the comments. All right, coming up, we'll talk more from the Anthony Weaver press conference and some more takeaways on what the Dolphins' new defensive coordinator had to say. But first, I want to give a huge shout-out and salute to today's presenting sponsor, making Dolphins Today possible. That is the Game Time app, the only ticketing app you will ever need because it's simply the best in all aspects. Whether we're talking flexible payment options, we're talking about an easy-to-use interface that even my grandfather knows how to use the Game Time app, and that's no disrespect to the papa, but he's not the best with the apps, but he's got the Game Time app, uses it for all his ticketing needs, just like I do. And hey, maybe you're trying to get out and see the Miami Heat. I know the All-Star break is in full effect, but there's still a long season to be had. So check out the Game Time app, download the Game Time app, use that promo code FINSCHAT, FINSCHAT, for $20 off your first purchase. And one thing I also love about the app, that high-definition, high-res photo from your seat. No deception, you know exactly where you're sitting. And don't just use it for sporting events. Get to a comedy show. How about a concert? Get your jam on. Either way, take the stress out of buying tickets. Use that Game Time app. Download the Game Time app. Terms to apply. But for using that promo code FINSCHAT, we'll give you $20 off your next purchase. And don't worry, we love you and we care about you. So we put that link right in the comments and description of today's video. Download the Game Time app and take the stress out of buying tickets with Game Time. All right, Anthony Weaver is the Dolphins' new defensive coordinator, and that means there's a whole new outlook on the Dolphins and defensively in particular. And one thing that coincides with the new defensive coordinator is the personality of the coach, the mindset, the philosophies, how he wants to call the game. And I don't want to make this an old school versus new school ordeal, but Anthony Weaver was pretty emphatic about calling the game from the sidelines, whereas Vic Fangio, a big booth guy. You know, you watch every Dolphins game like I did, at least once throughout the game, you got the shot of Vic Fangio up in the press box. No, Anthony Weaver's going to be down on the field with his guys calling the game from the sidelines. And again, I don't think there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but just a difference in philosophies here with Anthony Weaver. Check out what he had to say about being on the field as the defensive coordinator. He said, I need to feel right. What's going on in the game for you, how the players are reacting to a situation, and hopefully be a positive influence in whatever reaction that is. I don't think you can have that same effect from up in the booth. So Anthony Weaver has a pretty clear stance on where he wants to be as the defensive coordinator, wants to be on the sidelines with his guys, talking, seeing them, looking them in the face, having the feel of the game, helping them fight through adversity, that sort of thing, whereas Vic Fangio had the nice comfy seat up in the booth. But again, I don't want to make this old school versus new school. Talk to some different coordinators that I know. A lot of the new school guys love being on the sidelines. They can look their players in the eye. They can get a feel for the game. And a lot of the old school guys like to see everything from a schematical standpoint from up in the booth. See the all 22 and so on and so forth. So again, no right or wrong answer, but I do think it is worth noting that Anthony Weaver is very much pro being on the field as the defensive coordinator. So I ask you this question. Let me know. Should the defensive coordinator be on the field or in the booth? Up in the booth, you see all 22. Down on the field, you get more of a feel for the game. You're talking to your guys between each series. You can see the body language a little bit better and so on and so forth. So what do you think? Type field for being on the field or booth if you think the defensive coordinator should be up in the booth. Either way, there will be a difference in 2024 for the Aqua and Orange. Anthony Weaver will be on the field. Now next. I think it's important for a head coach and his coordinators to be on the exact same page. It was evidence that Vic Fangio and Mike McDaniel were not, and it appears Anthony Weaver and Mike McDaniel are. A ton of chemistry between the two, and the connection is lengthy and goes back a long, long ways. There's a lot of history between these two guys. They both coached for the Cleveland Browns in 2014, and all the way back before that in 2006, Mike McDaniel was on the staff for the Houston Texans, of which Anthony Weaver was a player. And through all those connections, I think there's a shared belief in a number of different important philosophies, including player development. There's the mutual respect they have for one another. Not saying Mike McDaniel didn't respect Vic Fangio and vice versa. I just think there was a big difference in philosophies which prevented them from being on the same page at times, whereas McDaniel and Weaver share very similar philosophies on building culture, building a winning mentality, striving for excellence. And yeah, those are all buzzwords and cliches, sure, but I do think there's value in your head coach, your coordinators, and an organization as a whole sharing the same belief system in order to achieve maximum results. Now, take a look at what Anthony Weaver had to say in his press conference about Mike McDaniel. He went on to say, who you guys see on a week-to-week basis is who he has always been. I had a tremendous amount of respect, even though I didn't play directly under him, but I just saw his work ethic as a veteran player, and that at that particular point, and then I had the opportunity to coach with him in Cleveland. I was like, oh, he's special. It took the rest of the league a little bit longer to see that. And I think that tells you that from the very beginning, Anthony Weaver and Mike McDaniel were on the same page, a shared mutual respect for one another, even in a player-coach dynamic, and now translating that into a coach-to-coach dynamic, I think will pay major dividends for the Miami Dolphins in the upcoming season in 2024. And I saved this one for last because it might be my favorite. Anthony Weaver has a sense of humor. Vic Fangio did not. And relax a little bit. I'm not saying you have to have a sense of humor to be an effective defensive coordinator in the National Football League, but sprinkling in a little bit of humor and relating to your players doesn't really hurt. I love this quote from Anthony Weaver on his opening press conference talking about Jalen Phillips. He said, quote, "I saw Jalen Phillips with his shirt off the other day, and he made me want to put a sweater on. That guy is chiseled." So, look, it's a small quote. It's a small anecdote, sure. But I do think the fact that Anthony Weaver shows the ability to have a sense of humor, to relate to players, will eventually pay off. And when you think about a guy like Vic Fangio, the Hard Knocks episodes, whatever it might be, there were plenty of instances in which you saw a disconnect between coach and player, whereas Mike McDaniel has always been a player-first-minded head coach. And there's some risk with that, of course, but I do think the ability to connect, engage, and be on the same page as your players will pay off for the Miami Dolphins. And from that quote alone, I think Anthony Weaver is in lockstep with Mike McDaniel and that same shared philosophy. But let me know what you think. Pull out your red pen. Overall, there's a lot to discuss. And again, it's just the press conference, but I still think it's important to grade the hiring of Anthony Weaver. Let me know down in the comments. Type A, B, C, D, or F. What grade do you give this hire of Anthony Weaver for the Dolphins as the new defensive coordinator moving forward for the Aqua and Orange? A, B, C, D, or F. Hey, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm feeling pretty generous. All about the follow train on today's episode of Dolphins Today. So if you follow me at Jake_Riepma, I'll be busy tweeting and I'll be busy following you back. So make sure you do. The next 10 people that follow me, I'm hitting that follow back as we continue to spread the good news of the Miami Dolphins on the YouTube, on the Twitter, and where else. Because you know your one-stop shop for the Miami Dolphins is Dolphins Today. Huge thanks to Jack Lauderay producing today's video. And thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Dolphins Today!